issues that we have as women, and again, I know I don't need to tell all of you this, is that voters are concerned about how we balance our family responsibilities and our duties on the job. When I ran for governor in 1996, I have 3 daughters, and one of them was in college, one was in high school, and one was only 10 when I got elected. But I was very fortunate because when I ran, my family was very involved in the campaign, and that made a huge difference. My husband was a judge, and he left his judgeship to help me run for governor, and that became known in the press, so that was helpful. My oldest daughter, who was then in college, took a semester off from college to help work in the campaign, and so it was viewed as a family affair, and that was very helpful because the electorate is concerned about that, and the younger our children are, the more concerned the electorate is. I remember Shannon O'Brien, who ran for governor in Massachusetts in 2002, got the Democratic nomination, telling me that she brought her 2-year-old daughter at the time to her announcement and how criticized she was for doing that. And yet, no one would ever have criticized a man for bringing his 2-year-old daughter to his announcement. Another thing that's different for women and men is that voters' perceptions of leadership styles are different for women than their perceptions of men's leadership styles. A lot of people in New Hampshire, when I got elected, and I'm sure Susan and Carla and Barbara and Liz can all testify to this, people weren't sure what to expect from a woman governor. I got more questions after I got elected. What's it like to be the first woman governor of New Hampshire? So I had a standard answer. It was, I don't know. I've never been a man governor. Now, while the research is somewhat mixed, it is clear that women's leadership styles differ from men's. We tend to be more task-oriented, and for you men in the room, I'm talking in generalities now. When I was in the state senate, we used to joke that it was the women who always went home with the full briefcases because we actually like to be prepared before we got on the floor of the Senate. Women often have better interpersonal skills than men. We tend to be more collaborative and democratic in our approach. We like to build consensus when we solve problems. And one of the things that I find interesting is that if we look at the new leadership models that have developed, they tend to be that collaborative team approach to leadership as opposed to an autocratic approach to leadership. So, ladies, we are definitely on the cutting edge when it comes to leadership. Now, we all know, I think, why it matters to elect more women to office. That's why many of you here in the room are serving. But I think for people who haven't thought about it, it's important to put it in very simple terms. Women's collective power creates change. When a critical mass of women is present, whether it's at a community gathering, whether it's in the boardroom, the state legislature, or at the top seat of power in the country, the discussion at the table changes. We all know that our lives as women are different than men's. They're not better, they're not worse, but they are different. And research shows that women office holders, whether they be Republican or Democrat, are more likely than our male counterparts to initiate and fight for policies that champion social justice, that protect the environment, that promote nonviolent conflict resolution, and that advocate for families. Hence, one and WiLL. States with higher levels of women's representation have more women and family-friendly policies. Right. And it has been women office holders, by and large, who have introduced legislation for child support, for pension reform, for health insurance for children, for equal pay, for tougher domestic violence laws, for women's health research. The list goes on and on. When I'm talking to young women, one of the things I talk about is access to credit. Because young women don't realize that access to credit has been relatively recent for women. I remember getting out of college and being newly married. I had a job that actually paid more than my husband, and yet he had to go down to the bank and sign for me before I could get a credit card. The passage of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in 1974 changed that. Now, as governor, I was proud to support and sign bills to repeal outdated laws that criminalized abortion, to require health plans to provide contraceptive coverage, to add sexual orientation to our state's anti-discrimination law. This was all legislation that was opposed by my male predecessor.